Every summer provides an opportunity for all 30 NBA teams to reshape and retool their rosters to better prepare themselves for the next season. Every offseason is a fresh slate where things can change quickly, and no team is ever that far away from contention if they play their cards right. But on the flip side, there are always a few teams that swing and miss, and end up regretting everything that they did that offseason. This brings us to today's video, where we'll be going through the 5 teams that I believe will look back on this offseason and regret the way they went about their business, whether it be because of bad trades made, poor free agency signings made, questionable draft strategy, or anything else that went down during this period. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team we'll be discussing today that will end up regretting everything that they did this offseason is the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors have been a pretty confusing group over the last few seasons. Ever since the peak of their dynasty days came to an end, they've struggled to commit to a path, vocally claiming that they're doing everything in their power to continue building a contender around Steph Curry, while simultaneously making some moves that indicate they've got their eyes set on the future. At last season's trade deadline, they did finally make a splash that put their money where their mouth was by going out and acquiring Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat, and after that trade, they got hot to close the season out and may have been able to make an even deeper playoff run than they did if Steph Curry didn't get injured in Game 1 of their second round series against the Timberwolves. The whole reason Jimmy Butler wanted out of Miami in the first place was because he grew frustrated with the lack of aggressiveness from the front office, feeling as though they were too complacent with what they had, despite it not being enough to go all the way. So the fact that he is now immediately dealing with that on his new team as well is kind of baffling. The Golden State Warriors have literally done nothing this summer. They've sat back and watched Kevon Looney leave in free agency, they didn't take a single player in the draft, they haven't made a single trade, and to this point, they haven't signed a single free agent. Mind you, this is not the deepest team in the world, with their bench unit consisting of Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, and Quentin Post as things currently stand. Of course, they are still trying to sort out the Jonathan Kuminga restricted free agency situation, but even that seems to be one where ultimately it could end up with Kuminga leaving or re-signing but being unhappy in his role on the team, which is a distraction that they just don't need. Al Horford is also, according to several reports, going to sign with them in free agency once this all gets sorted out, so he counts as one solid addition at center. But he's 39 years old now, and wasn't even starting for the Celtics anymore, so expecting him to be their full-time solution at center is asking a lot. Overall, the Warriors had an opportunity to build on the momentum that they generated at the end of last season, and instead, they sat on their hands and watched the rest of the league catch up to them. The next team that will end up regretting everything that they did this offseason is the Milwaukee Bucks. You can't say the Bucks didn't put the effort in to build around Giannis over the last 2 years, having brought in Damian Lillard to pair with him as an elite duo in theory, but the actuality of that partnership didn't come close to living up to the hype. On the court, they went from being a perennial 1 seed in the East to finishing in 3rd place and then 5th place in the standings over the last 2 years. They got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs both of those seasons, and the injury bug struck them at the most untimely moments consistently. When Damian Lillard tore his Achilles in the playoffs, that marked the end of this era of Bucks basketball, but the Bucks are still in denial based on how they have been operating this summer. If the team couldn't even make anything close to a run with Lillard, then there's no chance in hell that they can make one without him. Yet this offseason, every move indicates that they are running things back with one caveat. They're actually paying Damian Lillard a lot of money to go play somewhere else. They chose to buy him out of his massive Supermax contract, meaning there's over $20 million of dead cap on their payroll for years to come, hampering their flexibility for the foreseeable future. In a situation like this, one would assume it would be an ideal time to admit defeat and protect your future by shifting to a rebuild and trading away as much as you can for assets, especially when this team has as little of draft capital as they do have when they traded it all away to bring Damian Lillard in the first place, but instead, the Bucks are trying to plug the leak with a band-aid. Their big free agency signing was stealing Miles Turner away from the Indiana Pacers, which I can admit is a good fit next to Giannis Antetokounmpo in the frontcourt, and he'll do well replacing Brook Lopez at center, but Turner is not the kind of player that puts a team over the top. Otherwise, the Bucks re-signed pretty much all of their other players that hit free agency, including Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., Bobby Portis, and Taurean Prince, while also signing Orlando Magic rejects Cole Anthony and Gary Harris, and I'm sorry, but I just don't see how this season ends in any other outcome besides maybe a mediocre 5th or 6th place finish again, another first-round playoff exit, and an inevitable Giannis Antetokounmpo trade request, which they could have gotten a head start on this summer to maximize their rebuild. The next team that will end up regretting everything they did this offseason is the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are caught in the middle of two timelines, getting a nice head start on their rebuild, having brought in 2 lottery picks from this year's draft, but still having players like DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, and Zion Williamson on the roster that aren't exactly at the point in their careers where they would want to be taking a backseat to young guys. The Pelicans were brutalized by injury last year, finishing in 14th place in the West, but even at full strength, probably weren't good enough to do anything substantial. DeJounte Murray has openly talked at length in public, in interviews, and on podcasts about how much he has hated his time on the team so far. Zion Williamson finds himself in trade rumors every summer, only for the team to get cold feet and never actually end up exploring those trades for him, and this group doesn't really have much of an identity anymore. Not only does their lack of a commitment to a timeline make the choices they've made this summer look questionable, but some of the actual moves they've made leave you scratching your head. The biggest ones came on draft night when they made a move to go from pick 23 to pick 13 to select Derek Queen. In this trade, they swapped those 2 picks and they gave up a first-round pick in next year's draft, which will be the more favorable selection between their own selection and Milwaukee's pick, which is unreal value to throw away for a player in Queen who has real red flags worth monitoring. Queen was, according to the measurements and tests they run at the NBA Draft Combine, one of the least athletic players to ever get tested in the modern era, and his lack of foot speed and defensive deficiencies make it hard to fully buy into him despite having clear skill on the offensive end. Next year, there's a good chance that the Pelicans still stink and finish near the bottom of the standings again, plus if Giannis Antetokounmpo does ever request a trade, the Bucks could also stink, and in a loaded draft next year, losing the chance to bring in a top prospect with that pick that they traded away is not worth being able to move up and bring Derek Queen in my humble opinion. Then their other first-round selection, Jeremiah Fears, is maybe the most boom or bust prospect in the class, with unbelievable raw playmaking talent, but he's also disastrously inefficient right now with bad turnover problems, so you probably would have liked to have seen this team draft at least one safer, high-floor prospect with those 2 picks, instead of swinging on 2 risky prospects with promising upside, yet simultaneously disastrous red flags. The next team that will end up regretting everything they did this offseason is the Los Angeles Lakers. On the surface, the Lakers had a fine offseason, bringing in exciting names that will get their fans on board. Beneath the surface, though, there's more than meets the eye. The Lakers came into the period with one clear objective: find a center. Technically, they found one, but the one that they found may be the least exciting solution they possibly could have come up with. The Portland Trailblazers ended up buying DeAndre Ayton out of his contract, which allowed the Lakers to swoop in and sign him to finally secure a capable, starting caliber center. And while on paper Ayton has been a relatively productive center that has anchored some pretty good teams, the real story goes beyond the box score. Ayton, to put it lightly, has a frustrating work ethic and motor. He falls asleep on defense way more often than you would like your anchor in the middle to. He has a notably bad attitude and gets frustrated very easily when things don't get catered to him. Tons of reports have come out over the years about how behind the scenes he's known to mope around when constructive criticism comes his way. He's reportedly notorious for missing rehab appointments and being late to team meetings, and all of that was part of the reason that the Suns ended up parting ways with him, only for the Trailblazers to then also follow that up by paying him a lot of money to leave. Ayton has a lot of skill as a scorer and as a rebounder, but that kind of mindset playing next to LeBron James and Luka Doncic could be disastrous. The Lakers also lost Dorian Finney-Smith in free agency, which hurts because he was one of their better defensive frontcourt players that could space the floor too. Then, they also did sign Marcus Smart, but Smart has looked like a complete shell of his former self over the last 2 seasons and hasn't been healthy enough to even play half a season either of those years, so while the names that they brought in may look good in theory, the reality has a good chance of disappointing Lakers faithful. And finally, the last team that will end up regretting everything they did this offseason is the Brooklyn Nets. If you've watched along with my content over the last few months, you know this isn't the first time I've discussed the Nets in this kind of light, but I just simply can't leave them out of a topic like this. It started on draft night where they made an NBA record 5 selections in the first round of the draft, and with those picks, they took 3 point guards that can't really shoot, a lockdown defensive wing that has been streaky at best as a shooter throughout his life, and a skilled offensive big man that struggles on defense. In the modern age, floor spacing is as important as ever, and the Nets just brought in a draft class with a skill set matching the 1980s style of play. Sure, playmaking talent of players like Yegor Demin, Ben Saraf, and Nolan Traore are enticing, but they're not all going to be able to develop on the same team with the same skill sets. Then, after the draft, they finally traded away Cam Johnson, who was on the trade block for a while, to Denver in exchange for Michael Porter Jr., who will happily join this team's ecosystem filled with passers looking to get him open looks. And I have no doubt that MPJ is about to average a career high in points this upcoming season, but it's about to be the emptiest scoring numbers of all time, as they are destined to sit at the bottom of the standings. The Nets entered the summer with the most cap space, 5 first-round picks, and tradable assets, which is why most NBA analysts were predicting that this was going to be the summer where the team starts to turn their rebuild around and establish a foundation for the future. But instead, they seem more lost than ever, with an even longer timetable for their rebuild stretching out. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the moves that these teams have made this summer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.